And if you're helping someone and you're done or you think you're finished, you can ask, can I help you with anything else before I leave? Yeah. Can I help you with anything else before I leave? Hello. Sneeze. Oh, well, I tried to pause that, but that didn't work. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, the next one is let's touch base later, right? You might hear this expression, let's touch base later. So, for example, let's touch base later this week to discuss the project. Okay. That means let's not talk about it now. Let's do it later. Let's touch base later. That's a nice expression. You can also say, let's touch base later to see if there are any updates. So here you're waiting for some information. Let's touch base later today after I've spoken to Mike. Let's touch base later today after I talked to the teacher, the professor here at a university. So this is a nice expression. Whoops, don't get ahead of myself. So by asking to connect later, it's like saying, let's talk about this when we have more time. Right? Okay, so could you please send me that? This is a polite and direct phrase that you can use to make requests of your coworkers or your fellow classmates for things you might need. So, for example, you can say, "Hi, Mary, could you please send me this spreadsheet you worked on last week?" Right? "Hi, Bob, could you please send me the notes so I can work on our project?" So, could you please send me that? Could you please send me that? Can you please send me whatever it is? Another way. "Hi, Phil, could you please send me the document you mentioned?" Can you please send me the document you mentioned? It's a nice question if you want someone to send you something. Um, Next one is I have a meeting at here. You've got something planned, and you need to say that you want to let someone know that what your schedule looks like, so they can plan their day in advance. Right. I have a meeting at 4. Can we meet tomorrow? So this is a good way to um, explain what your schedule is or tell them what your schedule is. You could say something like, I have a meeting at 2, so I'll have to leave earlier today. I have a meeting at 10, but I can meet with you after that. Notice that I don't say 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock. I'm trying to get my students to stop saying o'clock. We don't need to say, and we don't need to say 2 p.m., 10 a.m. We don't need to say a.m. I would assume that at 10 a.m. is going to be morning because it's a morning meeting. I mean, who has a 10 p.m. meeting? If it were to be a 10 p.m. meeting, you might say, we'll meet up at 10 in the evening. You might say that if it's going to be an evening meeting. But normally, if someone says 10, I know it's going to be a.m. or in the morning. And I know it's 10 o'clock. I don't need to say 10 o'clock. It's not wrong. So if you do say 10 o'clock, it's not wrong. It's just not necessary. Okay. Let's come back to that later. Right? Maybe you're having a discussion where two people can't agree on something. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, let's come back to that later. Let's give it some time and let's think about it. Let's talk about it later. Another situation is let's come back to that later when we have more information, right? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. Let's come back to that later when we have more information. Let's come back to that later when everyone is here. This is a good way to say that if not everyone is present. Can we discuss a time? Can we schedule a time to discuss this further? Can we schedule a time to discuss this further? Right. So let's say you're having problems understanding the topic or understanding what's being said. Instead of spending time on that during a meeting, you can ask later, can we schedule a time to discuss this further? Right? Because you want to find out more, you maybe have more questions. Can we schedule a time to discuss this later? Right? I don't want to do it now. I want to do it later. Right? It's a good question to know. Can we schedule a time to discuss this in person? Nowadays everything's over Zoom or on Skype or something. And maybe you want to talk to the person face to face. You could say, can we schedule a time to discuss this in person? Right. Now I use the word can. The polite form would be could. Could we schedule? Could we do this? Can is what most native speakers will say. It's informal and it's, something you'll hear a lot. Can we? But if you wanted to sound polite, could we? Could we schedule a time? That sounds polite, doesn't it? Could we please? Could we please schedule a time to discuss this in person? Very polite. Just by changing the can to could makes it polite. By adding please makes it very polite. So it depends on who you're talking to, right? If someone that you can say can. If it's someone that maybe is your boss, or maybe it's one of your classmates that you don't know very well, you might say, could we? So here we use, could you give me a status update? Here I'm asking for you to do something. If I ask you to do something, scheduling a time is not a lot of effort, but could you give me a status update? Could you give me the notes from the last lecture? This requires a bit of effort. So if you're asking them to do some kind of work, this is status update. Someone's taking notes. You can use that polite form. Could you give me, because you're giving it to me. Could you give me a status update on the project, right? Maybe you're putting a project together. Could you give me a status update on the report, right? What's happening? Okay. The next one's a fun one. The next one is keep me in the loop. Let me know in the chat box below if you have heard this expression. Keep me in the loop. I think it's kind of a fun expression. Please keep me in the loop regarding any updates. So when you ask to be kept in the loop, it means you want to be informed or told about new developments or changes that happen. It's a way of saying when something new happens, let me know. Let me know. I want to be posted, updated. I want to know what's going on. So please keep me in the loop regarding any updates, or please keep me in the loop on any changes to the project timeline, whatever it is, you want to be kept in the loop. Okay. I'm not sure whom to ask. Oh my. I'm not sure who to ask. Whom versus who. Most of the time, you're going to hear native speakers say who. I don't think whom is something that a lot of people use today. I think the language is changing. So don't worry if you want to say who or whom so much. When in doubt, use who. That's what I tell my students. If you don't know, say who. So I'm not sure who to ask about this. Do you have any suggestions? Okay. This is it's a friendly way to say you need some help, right? I need some help. Use this phrase if you feel confused and want some guidance from a coworker or a classmate, or even a boss, and you can ask, I'm not sure who to ask about this. Do you have any suggestions? Here's a question with whom. I'm not sure whom to ask for permission. Can you help? See, you can use whom in this question as well. You could say, I'm not sure whom to ask. I'm not sure whom to ask, right? You can say whom. But as I've said, we say who quite a bit. I put a little note down here is we would give the banana to him, so we'd give it to whom. So if you can use him in the sentence, you use whom. So we would give the banana to him. So the question would be, so we'd give it to whom? To him, right? So if you're asking when to use whom, the trick is to remember this is that if the answer is him or her, use whom, right? So if him or her sounds correct, you can use whom. We would give the banana to him, so we'd give it to whom. But don't, like I said, don't worry about that too much, right? Don't worry too much about this one. Native speakers, like I said, don't think about it too much. Right? Yeah, English is funny that way. Whom is such an old British word, right? I think British people use it more often than Americans, and because they've kind of grown up with that. Whom shall I say is calling? Not who shall I say. Whom shall I say is calling? I think British people have heard the use of whom more than North Americans. I think I can say that. Yeah, I can say that. When I was a kid, I never really heard the difference of whom. Everything was who. All right, let's look at our next one. Our next one is I need your input on this project. Right? That's another way to say I need your help. I need the information. So, like, this is a professional way to ask for someone's opinion or to get feedback on something. Usually the person you ask has more experience than you, and you're asking because you trust their opinion, you trust their judgment, or you just want to sound friendly, right? You want others to feel good, right? I need your input on this project. Right? Good way to make friends. So I need your input on the design of the new pamphlet. What do you think? Right, so if you've done some work, and if you ask someone, what do you think? It's a nice way to start up a conversation. You might make a new friend. Another way to say this is, I need your input on the proposal before we submit it. So maybe it's something you're doing together. and you're working on the final touches. And say, here, ta, 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 what do you think? All right. Well, our classes, I think, hopefully has been helpful to you. Our next class, we will continue with phrases because I have some more phrases that can help you with talking to others in English. If you have any questions, please remember you can email them to me or post them in the chat box below. I'm always happy to hear from you. I'm here to help you. I'm your teacher. And until next time, please keep practicing. And thanks for being here. Bye bye.